Okay, good evening. I'm going to start. It's just over 20 of you logged in, so that's a good turnout compared to what happened last week. Many of you may be familiar with me. My name is Phil Tolhurst. I'm the support manager here at ShareScope. I've worked here for a little bit over 7 years, so I pretty much know anything there is to know about the program. Tonight I'm just going to give you a little bit of a walkthrough of ShareScope Gold, hopefully just show you some of the basics. We'll just see how we get on over the next hour. Hopefully I'm recording this, so a recording will be made available in the next day or two online. We'll let you all know once that's available. If you've got any questions, I'll try and ask them at the end. Whilst I'm actually doing the presentation, I don't think I'll be too able to provide any kind of technical support. So if you do have any problems, I apologise for that in advance. So just going to get started and see how we go on. So hopefully you can all see ShareScope Gold. What we've got at the moment is I've got the program running. It's a little bit smaller than I would normally use it because of the way the webinar software works. So I've got a toolbar across the top. I've got a toolbar across the bottom. You should just be able to see I've also got a toolbar down the right-hand side as well, but the icons are very small. That's just because of the way it set itself up, because it's in a slightly reduced window. What we've got at the moment is we've got a chart, and we've got a chart of 3i group. What I'd like to do is I'd like to start by looking at a table. Now, I have a couple of ways I can change to looking at a table, but what I'd like to do is just to show you probably the simplest way of navigating around ShareScope Gold, and that's to do what we call view cycling. Now, view cycling is quite simply pressing the Enter key. So if I press Enter now, if I press details, Enter again, sorry, I go to the table. So just to qualify, I press Enter, I'm going to the graph. I press Enter, I go to the details screen. I press Enter, I go to the table. And view cycling is that simple. It just rotates around the three main windows within the program. Pressing Shift and Enter, I go in reverse. So if I hold down Shift and I press Enter, I'm going to go to the details screen. Then I'm going to go to the chart. Then I'm going to go back to my list. So at the moment, I'm looking at the footsie 100 list. And the way I know that is if I look at the very top of ShareScope Gold, it says ShareScope Gold, right up the top here. And just after it, it says List footsie 100. It then says All Sectors, Table 1, and Portfolio Example Portfolio. The rest of this information I'll come back to hopefully a little bit later on. But the fact I'm on the footsie 100 list is going to become important. So just bear that in mind. If I switch to my graph now, so I'm just going to press Enter just to go to my graph. If I wanted to change share, I could press Shift Enter, select Aberdeen Asset Management, press Enter again, and go back to the chart. But that's very cumbersome. Instead of doing that, what I can do is I can just use the space bar. Now, by pressing the space bar, I just step down the list of shares. Now, the list is the footsie 100. We can see that at the top of the screen. So I'm just going to walk down the footsie 100. So I do Agreco, Anglo American, Antofagasta, ARM, Ashtead, etc., etc. And I could keep pressing the space bar and I would go down all 100 shares. If I wanted to go in reverse, I press the Shift and then the space bar. So you'll see I'm going back up the list. So just to reiterate, space goes down, Shift and space goes up. Now, when I'm going down the list, I'm following the list of shares in an alphabetical order. Press Shift and space, I go back up the list, and you'll see it's alphabetical order, or if I go back up, it's reverse alphabetical order. And that's because ShareScope is not only remembering the list of shares, but the order in which they're sorted. If I press Shift and Enter, I go back to the table. Now, looking at the table, I can see that the name column has a bold heading. And that signifies that it is currently sorted by that column. And you can see it also has, hopefully, you can see a little arrow on it as well, which indicates the order in which it's sorted. In this case, alphanumerically, lowest to highest. Now, I can sort by any column in the program that I want to. I've got a close plus minus column here, for example, and if I want to sort by close plus minus, I can double left click on the column heading, so the name of the column at the top in grey, double left click, and you'll see that the order of my list has now changed. You can see that I've got close plus minus in bold, and I'm basically looking at the highest riser by price, so £1.50 for Randgold Resources, all the way down. It starts going down to the fallers, and eventually if I was to scroll down, it would go right down to the highest faller. Rather than scrolling down to the highest faller, what I can do is I can double left click on close plus minus again, and it reverse sorts. So now I'm looking at Shire, which lost £1.90. Looking at shares in terms of how much they've gained or lost in real terms is probably not the best idea. What you really want to do is be looking in terms of percentages. So I've got a price percentage change column just next to this one. So if I double left click on that, I can see that actually the highest riser by percentage terms today, it was Fresnillo. And if I double left click on price percentage again, I can see that the highest fall in percentage terms was actually Smith and Nephew. The sorting is very simple. It's just a matter of double left clicking on a particular column heading. So if I double left click again, we've now got Fresnillo at the top, we've got Randgold Resources, then Hargreaves Lansdowne, then EasyJet, then Carnival. If I now press enter and go to my graph, we're on Fresnillo, as we'd expect to be. If I press space, I'm now following that same order. So the program's remembering that list, the FTSE 100, and it's remembering I've sorted it by highest riser, and I can keep pressing space and keep going down my chart, and you'll see I'm going down that list. And shift and space will work its way back up. If I press shift and enter, we're on BHP Billiton, and you can see that I've moved down. Now the spacebar works not only on the graph screen, shift and enter. When I go to shift and enter, you can see I'm on BHP Billiton's details screen. If I press space, you can see it works in exactly the same way, and shift and space takes me back up the list. Very easy, very simple navigation tool is to use the enter key to view cycle and the space key to move up, and shift and space to move down, up and down the list. But that's okay if I want to just look at a series of shares in order. But if I'm looking for a specific share, and at the moment I'm sorted by price percentage, so I've got no idea where it might be in my list, I can use the search function instead. Now, the search function doesn't have an immediate search bar. ShareScope doesn't have a search bar at the top of the screen like you might be used to in a browser. The way we start searching is we just start typing on our keyboard. So the moment I press a letter or number key on my keyboard, ShareScope will open a window called Find a Share. So if I'm looking for Glencore, for example, if I press G, the moment I press the letter G, it starts looking down my list. And I can already see Glencore Extrata is the fourth share in my list, so I could select it. I can click on OK, and I'll jump to that share. I could also be looking for something like Tullow Oil. Now, rather than just pressing G and looking at it from the list, if I type TUL, as soon as I type TUL, you can see that it's finding it by name, and it's found TUL as part of the name of Tullow Oil, and it's found, that's the only share it's found. So I can just click on OK, and I'll jump to Tullow Oil. Let's say I'm looking for a share, and I know the share's EPIC code. I can use the EPIC code to find a share. So, for example, I could type AAL, and you can see as soon as I start typing AAL, here bold, or in the strong white colour, it's found it by EPIC code. This is Anglo-American. So I've done AAL, and it finds it, and I can click on OK. So I can search by name. For example, I don't know, Let's type Barrett. There you go, Barrett Developments. And I can search on Epic code. I can also search by ISIN and CEDL. Now, the ISIN is the International Securities Identification Number, and the CEDL is the Stock Exchange Daily Official List Number. And they are unique identifiers for shares. Where the ISIN and the CEDL become into their own is if you're looking at a list of unit trusts, or possibly investment trusts as well. Unit trusts have very long names. They're often abbreviated. It can sometimes be difficult to find the right unit trust. And then within the unit trust itself, you have different classes of fund. So if you can get hold of the ISIN or the CEDL, often from your broker, you can actually search for these within ShareScope. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add these two values as columns and show you what they actually look like. So what I'm going to do is to add a column, what we do at the top of the screen, we've got our grey bar. And we can add a column by either right-clicking on a column heading or right-clicking on the grey bar where there are no column headings at the end here. So I'm just going to right-click up here. And I've got various add column options. And in this case, I want to add a general column. And I know that the ISIN is down here on the bottom left-hand side. So I'm just going to move my mouse down here. And I'm just going to add the ISIN. And then I'm going to repeat the operation. So I'm going to right-click up on this grey area. I'm going to go to add general column. And I'm just going to pop myself right down to the bottom left here, and I'm going to do CEDL. So you can see the ISIN is longer than the CEDL, and for UK shares, the ISIN actually contains the CEDL. The ISIN always starts with a country code, so you've got GB here, you've also got JE, and you'll see things like GG, US, IE, LU, many of the country codes you'd expect to see for shares being registered either in the UK or overseas in more tax efficient dependencies. But I can search for either of these. So if I pick, let's pick a JE one. So JE00BF here. If I start typing JE0, as soon as I type that third character, you can see it's found 4 shares already. I've got Glencore, Shire, Rosalie, WPP. And I could keep typing and eventually it would narrow down my selection to just the one share. So if I do 0BF, got to 0BF and it's found Rosalie for me. And I click on OK. And I'm actually on Rosalie, so it hasn't actually jumped anywhere. I can do the same thing with the CEDL. I'm going to pick Lloyd's CEDL, which is B62W232. So if I type B62W232, you can see, oh, sorry, I read the wrong one. That's Friends Life, not Lloyd's. But you can see it's found it by the CEDL for me. So I can search on name, I can search on Epic, and I also, if I need to, I can search on ISIN and CEDL. Now, as I say, with shares, you're more likely going to know their names. You're going to know if you want to find HSBC. You're not going to want to find it by its ISIN or its CEDL. But with other instruments where it becomes more complicated as to what you're looking at and how to find it in the program, the ISIN and the CEDL can become quite invaluable. So something to bear in mind. So that's ShareScope's search function. Now, I'm looking at the FTSE 100 list. If I type in FTSE 100 because I want to look at the index, nothing comes up. Because when I use the search function, it only looks at those shares in the list I'm actually looking at. So if I want to find something like an index, which is the FTSE 100, I need to change the list I'm looking at. So I'm just going to cancel this. Now, at the top of my screen here, I've got a couple of buttons that relates to different lists. I've got all, shares, investment trusts, indices, and FTSE 100. Now, it's the indices list I'm after, so I could click on indices, but there are many other lists that are not represented by these few buttons. So what I could also do is I can go to the View menu. So the menus are right up here at the top. They start with File and Edit and go all the way across to Help. And if I go to the View menu, you'll see the first option in the View menu is Change List. So I select Change List, and you can see, you can see that I have quite a large selection of different lists I can choose. I have, for example, just move the mouse across, I have the indices list I'm after, but I also have a units trust list, a gilts list, foreign exchange list here, FTSE 350 list, FTSE All Share list, I have the AIM list, Down here on the right-hand side, I've got the US 500, which is the S&P 500 by any other name. I've got the NASDAQ 100. I've got the Dow Jones Industrials. I've also got things like the NASDAQ, all the shares on the NASDAQ, all the shares on the New York Stock Exchange. So I have many, many lists I can look at. The one I'm interested in at the moment is indices. So I'm just going to select indices. So now I'm on the indices list, and hopefully a few of you are eagle-eyed enough to spot that a lot of the items in this list are in green text. Now, any item that's in green text in ShareScope is what we call historical. And by historical, that is an instrument that has not had any prices for at least 90 days. So basically, for whatever reason, they've ceased trading. It may be that it's a sector that's no longer got shares in that sector. For example, we've got footsie 350 packaging here. It's likely that whatever share that's in the packaging sector fell out of the footsie 350, so it stopped updating. Or the index stopped being supported, or if it's a share, like say Northern Rock, for example, it's Northern Rock, obviously everybody knows, ceased trading. Eventually it would fall out of the live list and it would become historical. Now, if I'm looking for these historical items, let's say I have a holding in Northern Rock way back when, and I want to record it as a historical portfolio item, I can find them. But for the day-to-day usage of ShareScope, the historical shares get in the way. They clog the program up a little bit. So what we want to do is we want to turn off seeing them. And the way to do that is to go to the View menu. And in the View menu, you have the option Show Historical Shares. To reiterate that, I go to View. And you can see Show Historical Shares is now unticked. So if I tick it, they come back again. I go to View, untick Show Historical Shares, and they're gone. So now I'm in my indices list. Now if I type FTSE 100 on my keyboard, you can see it finds the index for me. So I can select the FTSE 100, and now I've selected it. I can go have a look at its chart. I can see how it's performed. I could press enter again and go to the details screen, but there won't be any details for an index. They don't have fundamental data, so there's no necessary for me to do that. So I'm just going to press shift and enter, go back to my list. And that works for any instrument. If I go to View again, like we did a moment ago, and I go to Change List, this time I'm going to go to Foreign Exchange. So there you go. I've got well over 100 pairs of foreign exchange items in the program. So I could type GBP, USD, find pound dollar, press enter, have a good look at the chart. I could step down it using the space bar, just like we did before if I wanted to. Press shift and space, go back up, shift and enter, takes me back to my table. Now at the moment, my table's sorted by price percentage. I might, in this case, only want to see the GBP pairing. So if I sort back by name, by double left clicking on the name heading, I can then come down the list, find GBP AED, then press enter, and now I can just work my way down the GBP pairings, looking at the different Forex pairs. Press shift and enter, takes me back to the table. So I can find shares, but I can find indices, I can find Forex pairs, but it does matter what list I'm looking at. If I'm looking for something and I'm not sure what list to choose, there is the All list. So you've got a button for the All list up here at the top left. I can also go to View, change the list, and always right at the top. The All list contains everything in the program. The other side of the coin to that is that it's 58,272 items long at the moment, so it is quite unwieldy. For example, if I now type Barclays, you'll find that a lot of different Barclays entries come up. I can find the share, but there are lots of preference shares, there are going to be lots of corporate bonds, there are going to be lots of unit trusts, there are going to be all sorts of instruments that I could possibly find in the program. So just bear in mind, the All list can have its benefits, but it can also have a little bit of difficulty if you're trying to find something that's not necessarily just a straight up share. So I'm just going to go to View, change list, and let's go back to the FTSE 350. So I can find certain instruments easily enough by searching, making sure I'm in the right list. But as I've just said, the All list is the only place where I'm going to find forex pairs together with indices, together with commodities, exchange traded funds, program where they're all sort of grouped together. So if I'm looking for different items, that's the only place I'm going to find it. What would be possibly easier for me is if I could add certain instruments that I'm interested in to my own list, and then just look at that list. And if I'm looking at that list, then I can see all those instruments that I'm interested in all in one place without everything else, all nearly 60,000 instruments, cluttering up the list and getting in the way. And that's a basic function of a portfolio. A portfolio, at its most basic, is just a list of shares that is defined and updated by the user. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to create my own portfolio and add shares to it, and we'll see, as you'll see, it's fairly simple, and I can build up a list of instruments that I'm personally interested in quite quickly. So, to create a portfolio, up here in the middle of my top toolbar, I have an orange folder on its side, and it's got a little black chevron on it, an F12, and when I move my mouse over it, it says select a portfolio. I can also press the F12, the function 12 key on my keyboard. Alternatively, I could go to the portfolio menu here, and you can see select portfolio in the menu. Whichever way I choose to do it, whether I choose to go to the menu, use the toolbar button, or press the F12 function key, when I click select a portfolio, the view portfolio window comes up. And there's a few portfolios in there already. You can see I've got the example portfolio, key FX and key indices. Well, I want to start with my own portfolio. I want to start from scratch. So if we look on the right-hand side here, there are a series of buttons, and there's a new portfolio button. So I'm going to click on new portfolio, and this portfolio I'm going to call watch list. I'm not going to worry about anything else because this is just a watch list, and then I'm going to click on OK. So now you can see at the top of my screen on this very dark grey bar, it says portfolio watch list. I'm not going to worry about the currency. The currency isn't relevant if I'm just creating a list of shares. It becomes relevant if I'm recording transactions. And right at the very top of my screen, you can see it says ShareScope Gold Portfolio Watch List. And it says new shares in white here. So I want to start adding shares. Now, in this case, shares is a generic description. You could say no instruments, no securities, whatever you like, but it's just a generic thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click, and you can see almost exactly where my mouse is, there is the option Add Share to Portfolio. You can also see, hopefully, that I could do this using Control and A for Add. But I'm just going to select the menu item. So here we go. We open up the Add Share to Portfolio watchlist window. And this is very much like Find a Share, yet it has one key difference. At the top of this window, it's got a section labelled Find in List. And you can see there's a little drop down that says LSE shares. So if I came in here and I typed in footsie 100, nothing would come up because I'm actually looking at the LSE shares list. So that's a list of shares that are listed on the LSE. What I would suggest you do for the most and scroll right to the top and click on OK. Not all, sorry, not OK. You click on all, and then you can see it finds me the FTSE 100. Click on OK. It's added it to my portfolio. Do this again. Right click, add share to portfolio. Now, because I'm in the all list, if I type in GBP USD, it'll straight off find the forex pair for me. Click on OK, add it to my portfolio. Right click again, add share to portfolio. So I want the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Now I know that the EPIC code for that is DJI. So I type DJI, and you can see I found the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Click on OK. And I can keep going. Let's say I want to add a share this time. I'm going to right click, add share to portfolio. And this time I want to add Google. Now if I go the GOOG, there are actually two items in the Google list, and it's a little bit hard to see the difference between them. So you can see there's a little bar between EPIC and name, and when I move my cursor across it, you can see it changes to a double-ended arrow with a black line on it. Once I've got that cursor like that, if I hold down my left mouse button, just move my cursor across a bit, you can see that I can now tell that I've got Goog and Goog L. Now, Goog L is the share I'm actually after. Google split itself recently into two different types of shares, and these are the shares with voting rights. So I'm going to add those to my portfolio. And you can see already I've got two indices, I've got a Forex pairing, and I've now got a US share in my portfolio. And I can just carry on doing this. I can right click and share to portfolio, type in ARM, find ARM Holdings, click on OK, add it to my portfolio. So long as I know what I want to add to my list, I can just start a portfolio, right click and start adding shares. The other side of the coin is if I don't know what I'm adding, but I'm looking through a list and I decide I want to add a particular share to my portfolio. So rather than being in my portfolio, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my list now, and I'm going to go to, say, the footsie 350 list. So hopefully you'll all remember that you go to View, Change List, footsie 350. Now let's say I'm interested in the shares that have gained the most today. So I've got my price percentage column. I'm going to double left click there. And you can see I've got Hochschild Mining, Fresnillo, Kern Energy, and DAR. All have made over 5%. So I think I might be interested in looking at those. I'm going to add those to my portfolio. So I've got Hochschild Mining selected in blue. I'm going to right click, and you'll see right near the top of my menu, I've got Add Selected Share to Portfolio Watch List. Now, ShareScope remembers the last portfolio I looked at. If we just take a look at the top of the screen here, I've got ShareScope Gold. It tells me the list I'm looking at the moment, list FTSE 350. And then at the end of this, it tells me Portfolio Watch List. And that's the last portfolio I looked at in the program. It's called the current portfolio. It's also displayed right down the bottom of the screen, down here. Down on this bar, right at the bottom, you can see it says current portfolio watch list. And it's just designed to make my life a little bit easier. So I can just go add selected share to portfolio watch list. And I've just done one share. But I wanted to add more than one share to my portfolio. I wanted to add Fresnillo Care and DAR as well. Now, rather than doing each one individually, if any of you are listening have got any familiarity with Excel, ShareScope will use a similar process to Excel. So I could select Fresnillo, I could hold down the Shift key on my keyboard, select DAR, and it will select all those three shares for me. So it'll select the first one and everything in between to the last one, in this case only the three shares. I can then right click, and now you'll see it says add 3 selected shares to portfolio watch list. And I can click on that. It says, do you want to add these 3 shares to portfolio watch list? And I say yes. I can also use the control key. So if I select a particular share, hold down control, click on another share, and then click on another share, and just keep repeating the process, I can select a series of individual shares from a list, and then once I've selected all of the shares in my portfolio, can everybody hear me? Okay, I've got a message coming up saying the audio is not available, so I was just a bit worried you couldn't hear me. Sorry, thank you. Okay, so as you can see, just to reiterate what I was talking about, and click on various items in the list, and once I've selected as many as I can, I right click, and you'll see I've got add 13 selected shares to portfolio watch list. Click on that and it says, do you want to add these 13 shares to my portfolio? In this case I'm going to say no, but you obviously would say yes normally. So now if I look at my portfolio, so I'm going to click on the select a portfolio button. Watch list is already highlighted. Click on OK. You can see I didn't add those 13, but I did add Hochschild, Fresnillo, Kern and DAR, and they're just there in my portfolio for me. So I've got these 2 ways of adding shares to my portfolio. But what if I wanted to add shares to a different portfolio, or even create a new portfolio from scratch? Go back to View, we go back to Change List, and we go to footsie 350. And okay, let's think of a different way of sorting. Let's sort by capital. Let's pick some big shares. Pick the top 10 biggest shares. So we sort by capital. I've got the top 10 biggest shares today. So I'm going to hold down Shift, left click on Rio Tinto, select the top 10 biggest shares in the LSE, and then go to right click. And rather than add 10 selected shares to portfolio watch list, if I come down a little bit further, I've got add to another portfolio. And you'll see when I move my mouse over add to another portfolio, I've got the selected 10 shares option. What I also could have done instead, I could literally just have clicked on Rio Tinto, right clicked, move my mouse down to add to another portfolio, and rather than selected share, I can do shares above Inc. Inc being including. So I select that. Now, I don't want to add them to my watch list. I want to add them to a new portfolio. So I'm going to click on the new portfolio button. So I'm going to do top 10 biggest LSE shares. And you can see I can call a portfolio pretty much for anything I want to. Click on OK. Do I want to add these 10 shares to top 10 biggest LSE shares? Yes, I do. And they've added. You'll see that if I right click on Rio Tinto, I also have a similar option to add shares above Inc. to the last portfolio I selected, which was watch list. Between add selected share to portfolio watch list and add shares above Inc. and add shares below Inc. is add all shares to portfolio watch list. I would issue a word of caution about this. I have known customers in the past to have accidentally done this and added hundreds, if not thousands, of shares to their portfolio. It's not an irreversible process. You can give us a call in support. Don't forget the number for support is up at the top right hand corner of the screen here. And we can resolve it for you. We can usually go back, or we can help remove the ones that you've added. But just do bear that in mind. If I do add all shares to portfolio watch list, it does warn me. It says, do you want to add these 350 shares to portfolio watch list? And the answer to that is no. But just keep that in mind. In your day-to-day use of the program, it is possible to get those two. Just click on the wrong option and find yourself with many thousands of shares in your portfolio that you didn't intend to be there. Now, the other use for a portfolio is to record transactions. So I'm just going to show you a very basic way of recording transactions. I'm not going to go into portfolios and transactions too much depth tonight, but it's worthwhile me showing you that. So what I want to do is I want to create a new portfolio. I'm going to select a portfolio. I'm going to click on New Portfolio. And I'm going to call this My Holdings. Like I say, you can literally call a portfolio anything you like. So I'm just going to call it My Holdings. It says enable multi-currency display. It's in British pounds. That's all fine for my purposes for tonight. So I'm just going to click on OK. And we say no shares. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the share that I want to record a transaction into my portfolio. Now the share in particular is ARM. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to do add share to portfolio. Search for ARM. Find ARM Holdings. Click on OK. It adds it to my portfolio. Now remember, portfolio is just like a list of shares. So what I can do is now I've got ARM selected. I can right click on it. And you'll see I've got the option buy. I've also got sell. I've also got dividend. But for this purpose at the moment, I want to buy it. So I'm going to buy it. Now I'm going to do a hypothetical transaction in this. So I'm going to say I bought 1,000 of these. Excuse me. I'm going to say I pence. I could put in a broker charge if I wanted to. Oops. 14.95, for example. I'm not going to put a stamp charge in. Usually you probably would if you were buying a share, but I'm not for the purposes tonight. And I'm going to say I bought these way back. So actually on the 4th of January 2011. So I bought 1,000 shares in ARM Holdings back on the 4th of January 2011. Click on OK. And two things have happened. The screen has changed and my transaction has been recorded. Now the screen has changed to the transaction screen. You can see at the top it says ShareScope Gold Transactions. You can also see on the dark grey bar it says Transactions for Portfolio My Holdings. It tells me the current value of my holding is £8,515. It tells me that the overnight gain on my portfolio was £105 and it went up 1.25%. And it tells me I'm currently making a profit of £4,130. So basically, if I sold my holding in ARM Holdings, I would make £4,130. And it's telling me I've got a realised profit of 0. Now, realised profit is what I would make if I actually sold the share, and I have yet to do that. And it's also got a list of my charges. And you can see I've got my ARM Holdings transaction here. Now, it's currently sorted by date. What I'm actually going to do is sort it by name. So if I double left click on name, what I get is I get two lines for ARM Holdings. I get a buy line, which is a transaction line. And then I get a latest line, which tells me the latest position of my holdings. And then finally I get a totals line. Now, I could, let's say, I've made lots of money in this. I wanted to sell half my holding, realise some of that money, profit I've made. So I'm going to right click and choose sell. Now this is tonight's close, so I'm going to use that, I think. Going to sell half of my holding. Let's say I paid a broker charge, $14.95. Did the sale today. Click on OK. There you go. I've got a sell now. So now you can see I've got buy, sell, latest. And you can see also I've now made a realised profit of £2,050. And the value of my holding has gone down, but my profit loss figure basically is the same because I've got a unrealised profit and a realised profit being added together. Now, one little nice trick I do like to show people. Going forward, ShareScope will offer to add any dividends that are paid out to me to my portfolio. But if I've recorded an historical transaction like I have tonight, it won't automatically offer to add the dividends that were paid in between times. So what I like to do is to show people how you can actually get ShareScope to actually do that for you. What you do is you right click and you'll find an option that says show latest dividends near the middle of the menu there. So I click on show latest dividends and it says at the top here the following dividends have been paid since you last reviewed them, and it says the 6th of August 2014. Now, I need to change that date. Basically, I need to change that date back to before I bought my share, which was on the 4th of January 2011. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on select date down here at the bottom left, and I'm just going to type in a new date. So I'm going to go to 01/01/11. Click on OK. And you can see now it's offering to add dividends to 3i Group in the example portfolio and to ARM Holdings in my portfolio called My Holdings. The example portfolio has an example transaction in it, a little bit like I've just recorded in this portfolio tonight. And so that's why it's offering to add dividends to that particular portfolio here, the example portfolio. I'm quite happy with that. I really want to see the dividends for ARM Holdings, so I'm just going to click on OK. And now you can see that I've got my original purchase, I've got a series of dividends being paid out, and then I've got my sell. Now, if I started recording lots of holdings in lots of different shares in this particular portfolio, seeing all of the transactions all of the time can become a little bit intrusive. They could just clog up the screen. And so there's a way of toggling the display in the transaction screen. If I right click, there's an option that says show latest only. And you can see it's toggled by using the plus key. So if I go to show latest only, it literally just shows me the latest line. So it shows me the current value, any profit I've made, and any gains or loss. I can expand it back out again and see all of those transactions. Press plus, goes back, press plus, goes out. So it's a very basic overview of portfolios. There is more. What I'm going to hopefully do is do another webinar at another date when I will look at portfolios in much more detail, look at many more of the transaction types, look at things like cash accounts as well whilst I'm at it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to just a normal table from my portfolio. So you should be able to remember, we go to view, go to change list. But I can't select a list at the moment. These are all grayed out. The reason for that is that I'm in the transaction screen. And the transaction screen is considered to be a different screen to a normal list screen. So rather than doing change list, what I have to do is do change window. So when I go to view change window, you can see I've got the all list, I've got the shares list, and then I have other fixed lists. I also have various other windows I can look at as well. So I've got shares directors dealings, shares news, shares price list, for example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to other fixed list first. I'm going to go to the footsie 350, and we're back in the footsie 350, and we've got Rio Tinto selected. So we've seen that I can look at, by pressing enter, I can look at a graph screen. Press enter again, I can look at the detail screen, which shows me lots of fundamental information. And if I press enter again, I go back to the table. But there are other screens, as I've just pointed out, that we can look at for individual shares. The most important of those is probably the news screen. So I've got two ways of doing this. I can either right click, and you'll see I've got an option to go to shares news, or I can go to view, change window, shares news, or of course there's always that keyboard shortcut, which is the backslash key, which is down in the bottom left hand corner of your keyboard. So we go to shares news. There we go. I've got a full list of news for Rio Tinto. So you can see up here I've got news for shares, and it says Rio Tinto, and I've got total stories 8,643, and I've got from that 246 relate to Rio Tinto. So I've got a series of UK calendar of corporate events news stories here, and then I've got a story about BHP Billiton. But I'm looking at Rio Tinto. So if I select that, I want to look at that news story. I can double left click on it, and I'll open up the news story. Not clear to me why Rio Tinto has been flagged for this news story. So what I'm going to do is at the bottom of the news window, there's a button that says Locate Next Found. So if I click on Locate Next Found, it jumps me to where Rio Tinto is actually mentioned in the news story, so I can see why it's been flagged up. So it says miners such as BHP and Rio Tinto PLC have been increasing their supply of iron ore from operations in Australia's northwest. You can see why it's been included and why it's been flagged up as being a news story relative to Rio Tinto. I'm just going to close that. So I'm currently looking at the news for Rio Tinto, but it says I've only got 246 stories present. And if I scroll right down to the bottom, this news is only going back to the 27th of May 2014. If I wanted to look at anything older news-wise for the share, then we have a thing called the News Archive. Now, if I want to access the News Archive for a particular share, I should really do it from the list, not from the news screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to View, going to go to back to Change Window, back to Other Fixed Lists. Now, this is all a bit fiddly. So what I could do is rather than go to Other Fixed Lists, I just follow down. I've got Return to Previous Screen, where it had Shares News. Takes me back, and I'm still on Rio Tinto. So just to reiterate, I can go to View, Change Window, Shares News, and then View, Change Window, Return to Previous Screen. The backslash key on the keyboard, so you can't see me pressing the keyboard, so the backslash key does exactly the same thing. So it takes me to the news for the Rio Tinto, takes me back to the list of shares. So as I say, there's a thing called the News Archive you have access to. And there's a couple of ways of accessing it, but again, I'm going to go to the View menu. So I'm going to View, go to Change Window, and it's not in the list. Because I'm not actually changing the window to go to the News Archive. The News Archive actually opens in a separate window. So what I actually have to do is I have to right click on the share, and you'll see if I come down here, I've got Shares News Archive. Click on that, and it opens up the News Archive. Now here, I've got RNS stories. But I don't have any of the other stories I was looking at. And at the top left, it actually click on Apply, and that shows me all of the news. And this will go back, with RNS especially, it goes back over 5 years. So I can click on my date button. I can go back a couple of years, say 2010. I'm not sure if I've got news for that, but we'll go anyway. The dates, click on Go. There you go. I've gone back to the 12th of August 2010, and you can see we've got RNS news for this particular share going back at least 4 years. It goes back 5 or 6 at the moment. So that's the News Archive. Again, the easy way to get to it, right click, Shares News Archive. If you like your keyboard shortcuts, you've got Control and N. Now, a similar window to this is the dividend report. So if we right click, you can come down here and you can see it says Shares Dividend History. And you can see to get to it is Shift and the letter D for dividends. We click on that. And this time, rather than news, what we get is a list of dividends that have been paid out, nicely formed in a tabular format. If they were going to be paying out, it would have details of them going ex-div, when they were going ex-div, when they were going to pay out, and how much they were going to pay out. Rio Tinto hasn't got that information at the moment, so it's not there. Just going to close that, just to reiterate that one. Right click, Shares Dividend History. Under for any particular share is what we call directors' dealings, and again, as you see, lots of things come from right clicking. So we right click, follow down, and we've got Shares Directors' Dealings. We can always use the full stop key in this case to get to it. We go to Shares Directors' Dealings, and this is showing me the Directors' Dealings for Rio Tinto. I'm sorry if the sound isn't particularly good. It's only the second time that we've tried it with this particular software. It's something I'll have to take up with them in the next few days and see why it's bad. So just to go back, I'm just going to press full stop, which will take me back, and just to reiterate that. So I'm just going to right click, go to Shares Directors Dealings, and this shows me a series of Directors Dealings for the share. Not only can I see Directors Dealings, I can also see Major Holdings Dealings. So if I right click here, you'll see there's an option to do Select Display. Do Select Display, and you can see at the moment I've just got Directors Dealings ticked. I could tick Major Holdings Dealings. I could just do Directors Holdings and Major Holdings if I wanted to, so I could just see what they actually currently hold. Click on OK, and it shows me just that information for in this particular case for Rio Tinto. So right click, and you can see return to previous screen, go back. A couple of the other screens we can look at. There's what we call the key date screen, so you can see shares dates. It's a little pop-up just shows you key dates for the share in the coming years. And anything with a U after it is unconfirmed. This is a simple window, you can just close that one. And we also have the shares price list. The price list shows me, open on the wrong screen, sorry, there you go. The price list at the moment here just shows me the closing prices. But I do have a settings button, so I can click on settings. And I could opt to use open, high, low as well as close. I could also do volume. I could also do percentage change. Click on OK. So now I have to make the screen a bit bigger. There you go. And there's volume there as well. And I can also tick this to show me any adjustments for splits and consolidations that may have been made. And then I have to move over a bit and you'll see adjustments, and then I can scroll down and you can see that there has been an adjustment made to the price data. So that's the adjusted price data. If I untick this, then I can see what the share actually was at that date before we provide the historical adjustment for the split or the consolidation. So that's the shares price list. So most of these things start by right-clicking. So you've got shares directors dealings, shares dates, shares price list, shares dividend history, shares news archive. I hope that's given you a little bit of an overview of some of the screens that you can see in the program, how to navigate around the program, how to search, how to create your own portfolio and add shares to the portfolio. If anyone's got any questions, I'll be happy to try and answer them. Just type them in, and what I'll do is I'll try and answer them in the order they appear in the chat. Okay, so how do I put a footsie 250 button on my title bar? So what I want to do is I want to customize the toolbar. So I'm going to come up to my toolbar at the top of the screen, pick any button, doesn't matter which one, just right click and select Customize Toolbars. Now, the bar at the top is called the main bar. One of the important things is to make sure I've got main bar highlighted in blue on the left-hand side here, and I have. I then want a list button, so I'm going to go to the Lists tab. So it gives me all the buttons for all the different lists. I'm going to scroll down a bit until I find the footsie 250 list button. There it is. So I highlight that. And now I want to move it onto my toolbar. My toolbar is shown over here on the right-hand side. So I'm going to use the single arrow pointing to the right. And that's really important. Don't do the double one. You'll add all of those buttons. Just a single one. Move over. Now, you'll see it's added to the bottom here. And you can see, if you actually look at the toolbar, you can see it on the far right-hand side of my toolbar. Now, I want it over here by footsie 100. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these up and down arrows. If I click on up, you can see as I'm clicking on up, it's going up. And it's also going to the left on my toolbar. So I keep on clicking up. And if I keep going, eventually it's going to sit next to footsie 100. Once I'm happy with where it is, just click on OK. And there you go, you've added it. Any other questions? It's possible footsie 100 and you can add any instrument in the program to a portfolio, whether or not you have holdings in them, or whether or not it's possible to buy or sell them. You can just add anything you like. Gold is just in the commodities list. FTSE 100, obviously we saw it's in the indices list. So I can't see a problem with that, Brian, but if you've got a more specific question, give us a call in support tomorrow and we can probably chat with you about it then. We're not going to do a Mac version. What we're working on at the moment is what we're calling a web-based version. So the idea is that that will then be accessible in any device that has a browser. So whether that's a Mac, an iPad, Samsung tablet, or any other Android tablet for that matter, even a Unix, Linux machine, Windows machine, whichever type of machine you've got, as long as you have a browser, you should be able to then access it. The idea is that that will be released before the end of the year. I'm not at the moment able to give you an exact date. It is quite advanced. We still have some tidying up to do, but there is no fixed date yet for a release date. But when we do release it, you'll have to trust me on this. Everyone will know because we will make a big splash about it. Are we planning to get European data? I don't know myself what our next sort of plans are for increasing the data set within the program. European data is requested quite a lot. I personally would like to see us get data from something like Kayaks, but I don't make these decisions. They're made by people superior to me. So by all means, send us an email asking us to get European data. The more people that ask, the more likely we are to do it. How do I put the broker's consensus in the column? So you want to add a column. So I showed you a little bit earlier how to add columns. But what you do is you right-click on a column heading, general column, and you'll see you've got broker's consensus, previous broker's consensus, and broker consensus change in the middle here. And so I'm going to do previous broker consensus just because I've got broker consensus already. But again, just right-click, add general column, and broker consensus is in the middle just at the top there. With CMS, when I press / to see the news, the latest news, as in news archive, is not listed. With CMS, okay, I'm not in the list, so I'm just going to go to, let's go to share CMS. Communities, I presume you mean. I have news, communities. There appears to have been much news out for it. There's an RNS news. You don't see RNS news in the program data to look at the archive. But I do, that's one of the 31st of July there. And I've got, sorry, the sound's breaking, I know it is. If you're not seeing the news for CMS, when you press /, maybe give one of us a call or drop us an email tomorrow and we can always talk you through with it. It may well be that you need to delete your news. Or there is one thing you can try. If you right-click on a share, and it doesn't matter which share, there's an option that says Edit Shares News Search. Click on Edit Shares News Search, and then just click on OK, and you'll see it'll re-index, and that might help. But yeah, if you've got a problem like that with the news, then perhaps it's better to give us a call in support. Anyone else? Yes, you can. The chart I've got here isn't particularly very good, but you do a thing called additional graphs. So if I just press enter, right click, you'll see just near the middle of the menu you've got additional graphs. So you click on additional graphs, and then you see you've got add button, and you can add the footsie direct 100 directly, you can add the share sector index directly, or you've got add share index. So I could click on add share index. I could do, for example, I'm in the shares list. So let's change that to the all list. Maybe type in ASX, which is the FTSE all share. Click on OK. It'll ask me for a colour. Dark blue's fine, but I'll make my line a little bit thicker. Click on OK. Click on OK. And there you go. So what it does is it rebases it to the left-hand side. What I would say is, in a recent version of ShareScope, I think it might be December's, I wrote about adding shares like this to the graph, so you might want to go and have a read of that. If I just... So this is my browser here. Hopefully you can see this. So this is our website. We go to our website. Under what's new, you'll see there's a link to ShareScope. You go into ShareScope, and then, so I think it's December's, but I can't be 100% sure. Scroll down a bit. Yep, no, not December's. It might be an earlier one. Have a look through the ShareScopes on our website, and I definitely wrote an article about it in one of the more recent ShareScopes, so it's definitely worth having a look at one of them. Okay, Amir, what you're looking there is RNS news stories, and RNS news stories don't appear directly in any version of ShareScope. they only appear in the news archive. So yes, control N is definitely a better way to look at it in that regard. So the news archive is better if you want to see RNS stories. Broker recommendations are only broken down in ShareScope Plus and ShareScope Pro. So in ShareScope Gold, you can only see the consensuses, but in ShareScope Plus and ShareScope Pro, you actually have a separate screen which will show you the breakdown of when different brokers gave their recommendations and what recommendations they gave. So if you're looking for more broker details, then you would have to upgrade to ShareScope Plus. When is the next webinar? I don't know at the moment. If this one works out, I shall probably try and do one in a couple of weeks. I'll have to sit down and have a think of what I want to do next. I may look at portfolios, but I also equally want to do one that shows more about setting up graphs and setting up tables, that sort of thing. So, yeah, definitely not next week, but possibly the week after. We shall see. But we'll send out another email when I've decided on a date. Thank you. No problem. Any other questions? I'd like to thank you all for attending. Sorry about last week again. There was a bit of a problem with the email going out to give you all the link. So I sat here and only 3 people logged in. So I'd like to thank those people who logged in. But thank everyone else to come in tonight. Hopefully I've been recording tonight. I'll have a listen back. And we'll go from there. The thing with data mining is that we are overhauling it. And I expect that to happen in the next month or 2. And when we do, it's all going to completely change. And so the most likely thing with data mining is I will wait until it changes, and then I will run a webinar discussing all the changes, because it will be a lot better to use. It'll be more powerful. There's some nice additions coming into ShareScope Gold that people hopefully will like, including a calculation column, which enables people to do things like take one column and divide it by another column and those sorts of things. So I probably won't cover data mining as it exists at the moment in a webinar, as I say, until we've released the IO. Okay. If you've got any queries, any support questions, please don't hesitate to contact us in support. As I say, the 0845 number is at the top of the screen, but we do have an 0207 number if you prefer to phone that one. We are here from 9 till 6, Monday to Friday, or you can email us at support@sharescope.co.uk. And we're more than happy to help you. We'll spend as much time helping you with the program as you need. So don't be afraid to contact us. We'd rather you contact us than spend hours trying to work out something in the program. Thank you again for your time, and hopefully I'll see you with the next webinar.